Today, March 14th, 314, is not only the day that part of the country does this silly thing about changing the clocks. 314 is Pi Day. That's important for us nerdishly oriented people. We're not talking about pi to eat here. We're talking about 3.14159 pi. The ratio of the circumference to the diameter of a circle, that most perfect of geometric forms, and also perhaps of social forms, circles of friends, circles of concern. We have circled a year since the pandemic forced us to embody our congregational circle by looking through rectangles. All these screens, so far away from each other, but at the same time, very close up. In some ways, we are closer to each other than we have ever been, even while our circle has been cast broader than it has ever been. This indeed is a revolutionary time, but one in which our country seems to be composed of circles that are hardly intersecting at all. Last August, Reverend Christine gave a sermon called The Fourth Turning, in which she talked about cycles in American history. My summary of her summary of the book by Strauss and Howe is that there are roughly 100-year cycles in which America has faced a crisis that threatened its existence, recovered, grew into a renewed sense of community and commitment to societal welfare, and then began to shift back to an emphasis on individualism, ultimately facing disintegration, and then a new crisis. One cycle began with the Revolution and initial independence, and the next with Southern secession and the Civil War. This latest cycle began with the excesses of the Gilded Age in the early 1900s and has brought us, after 100 years, to today. Another book, The Upswing, by Robert Putnam and Shailin Romney Garrett, tells much the same story and documents with lots of interesting statistical measures this current cycle. They look at all kinds of stats about income distribution, bipartisanship in Congress, split ticket voting, church membership, polls reporting levels of social trust. They consistently find an inverted U curve, an I curve, where the individualism, income disparities, and social unrest of the Gilded Age gave way to increased social cohesion following the Great Depression and World War II, peaking in the 1950s and early 1960s with what's been called the liberal consensus, which gave us, among other things, the interstate highway system and culminated in the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts. It then began to break down in the later 1960s and 1970s, and then began the big pushback toward individualism and distrust of government, which accelerated during the Reagan years and continued. With Grover Norquist in 2001 saying on NPR, "I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I can drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub." And here we are, 2 decades into the 2000s, facing massive income disparity, social unrest, and now a pandemic that has magnified our inequities. Another crisis. Back last August, 5 months into our pandemic shutdown and 3 months before the election, Reverend Christine questioned whether we had yet hit bottom And were we ready as a country to rebuild our democracy and recommit to community? Were we ready to make the next turning? Well, clearly we weren't then. Maybe we're not there yet. The truth is, there's no guarantee that we will recover, that we will turn. The reactionary forces of white supremacy and voter suppression are strong in pushing their agendas. And we have many in our governments, local, state, and federal, who seem to be more committed to their own power than to the principles of democratic government on which this country is founded. The stimulus bill passed this week. Good news, but with votes from only one of our two parties, even though it is supported by over 75% of the nation. There is work to be done, and work is being done. There are efforts to protect voting as well as to suppress it, led in part by Melinda Iyer and other UUs. We can be apocalyptimists, like we talked about 2 weeks ago. We really have to be. As Reverend Christine has encouraged us, we UUs, along with others of goodwill, can lead through love in this time. It will take time and persistence. These cycles are generational. Demographics and the changing attitudes of the young are on the side of inclusion and community. But we do have to persevere through this period of hostility. I'm concerned that we have not only slid from a communal we to an individualistic I, although that certainly exists, as demonstrated by so many people's refusal to do the simple thing of wearing a mask. We seem to have settled into circles of we's that oppose each other, that see sets of we's that are us's and them's. And let's recognize that we are by no means immune to this. We can be just as quick to vilify and enjoy how cleverly we can craft our insults. It takes discipline and effort to get beyond that. Our first principle asks that we affirm the worth and dignity of every person. It doesn't ask, but I think it should, that we also affirm our universal fallibility and, shall be admitted, our dark sides. We have broken our vows 1,000 times. It brings to mind that well-known poem by Edwin Markham. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. Well, drawing a circle is one thing, but bringing people in requires making connections. And that takes courage, as our choir sang. We need love. And among the preconditions of love are humility and curiosity. We have to be prepared to listen and learn. This I, we cycle happens over and over in America because commitment both to individual freedom and to social support are deeply embedded in our national character. And we struggle with the balance. The Frenchman Alexis de Tocqueville noted in his visit to America in the 1830s that Americans, while restless and acquisitive, were also quick to form and join a wide variety of social organizations, churches, and other things. We want our freedom, and we want our community. This balance of contradictions is not just American, it's fundamentally human. The great Rabbi Hillel, roughly a contemporary of Jesus, summed it up. If I am not for myself, who will be? If I am only for myself, what am I? As a nation, we seem to be asking ourselves, what are we? We are going to be challenged more and more to answer that. Climate change and other disruptions are coming. We're going to have to be willing to adapt, to think seriously and decide what matters most. Quoting Maureen Murdoch, we must have the courage to live with paradox, the strength to hold the tension of not knowing the answers, and the willingness to listen to our inner wisdom and to our inner wisdom and the inner wisdom of the planet, which begs for change. This planet, which is so beautiful. More recently, E.B. White put our dilemma this way: if the world were merely seductive, that would be easy. If it were merely challenging, that would be no problem. But I rise in the morning torn between a desire to improve the world and a desire to enjoy the world. This makes it hard to plan the day. I was struck recently by something I read by Anne Enlin Cheng. We are a nation at ease with grievance, but not with grief. That is a telling phrase, a nation at ease with grievance. She goes on, we as a nation have been more focused on quantifying injury and shoring up identity categories than doing the harder work of confronting the enduring, ineffable, and times contradictory and messier wounds of American racism. And more generally, I would say, of other aspects of American life. She continues, the challenge of democracy is not about identifying with someone like yourself, that's easy to do, nor about giving up your self-interest. That's hard to ask. It's about learning to see your self-interest as profoundly and inevitably entwined with the interests of others, with the interests of we, broadly conceived. Marcus Aurelius, Rabbi Hillel were saying this 2,000 years ago. The cycles have been going on a long time. Let's think a bit more about what we means to us. I think most of us would readily agree that it doesn't just mean people like us, whatever that may be. We say as a congregation that we are committed to being radically inclusive. And we've done some specific things in how we use language and in changes to our building to make that real. We also recognize that the location of our building in Paradise Valley means that we aren't as accessible to many people as we'd like to be. Not only because of transportation, but also because of perceptions of economic class. We may not be as welcoming as we want to be. It will take some insight and creativity if we are to make progress in broadening who we are as a congregation. Going virtual during the pandemic has opened up us not only geographically, but also generationally to people for whom it has been hard or impossible to come to the building. We had a good discussion after last week's service about what we've learned this year of being together virtually. What capabilities do we want to keep in some form? I appreciate our minister and board bringing us all into this discussion. What enhanced capabilities will we be able to afford? What tools? What staff? I think it valuable explicitly to think of we, not only socially and geographically, but also temporarily, generationally. UUCP turns 75 next year. Our we includes those who came before us, who bought the land on that dirt road that was Lincoln Drive, built the building that we so badly want to get back to, created our memorial garden and beautiful grounds with that long view toward Camelback. We honor them by continuing and building on their legacy that feeds us. And we also invite and honor those who are coming and who will come, bringing their energies and perspectives, changing us, no doubt, and likely for the better. I have seen changes in our culture in the 20 years I have been here. We are, frankly, kinder with each other, certainly less dogmatically humanist. We are more theologically diverse. And speaking as a humanist, that's a change I'm happy about. Let's acknowledge and celebrate how this community has pulled together during this pandemic year. It's been a year. And stayed true to who we are. We've maintained our commitment to justice. We've maintained our staff. We've supported the Navajo Nation. We've supported Puder. We've supported each other, being willing to ask for help and being willing to give it in many ways, sometimes through our neighborhood groups, and often through private acts of generosity, often trusting our minister and lay pastoral team to tend to needs expressed quietly. We have shown our capacity for compassion and our resilience, but it is not over yet. Keep the faith. Our congregation, our people, our country need that more than ever. Let's lead the way with love. So may it be. Amen and Ashe.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. It was a beautiful sermon. I've heard it said that the only true security is in community, in the kind of we that Gary just talked about. So I won't be afraid as long as you stand by me. Please feel free to sing with me. Lyrics will be in the chat. Here we go. When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, and the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, I won't cry, I won't cry. No, I won't shed a tear. Just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Whoa, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by. You want to sing the string parts? Boop, 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 wee. Boop, boop, wee. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. Boom, boo, doo, doo, dee. Boop, boop, wee. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Bum, ba, da, da. Boop, da, da. Well, darling, darling, stand by me. Whoa, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Whoa, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Thanks, all.
Oh my, Benji, thank you. You're incredible and so versatile in so many things. Wow. Before closing words, we'd like to invite you to coffee hour. Like last week, within coffee hour, there will be 3 choices. There is our kids' coffee hour, our regular coffee hour breakout groups, and then there is a special board chat on how this time online has led us to be more radically inclusive. This week, the question for the board chat is this: when we think about radical inclusion, who isn't there in this conversation? Who else do we need to consider when we think about how to be radically inclusive when we move to an in-person/hybrid model? The coffee hour link is posted in the chat and will be on the final slide. Visitors, we hope you will join us. We're a friendly bunch. And everybody, don't forget to make your pledge. Go to the website. We're counting on it. And please, check on each other. As we leave this virtual space together and move into the week, let's all try to be more present and aware, grateful for this chance to be alive and to be kind to one another. As the poet Mary Oliver writes, 10 times a day, something happens to me like this. Some strengthening throb of amazement, some good, sweet, empathic ping and swell. This is the first, the wildest, and the wisest thing I know, that the soul exists and is built entirely out of attentiveness. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe. Go in peace. Go in love.